Hi, everyone. Welcome to this presentation titled Exploring Azure AI Ecosystem Beyond Azure OpenAI and LLMs. A little bit about me. I am a Microsoft MVP. I currently work as a client partner at a software consulting company called Jenica. You can find us at jenica.com. And when I'm not doing anything technology related, I love to spend time with my wife and my two kids, watch movies, playing video games, and anything football or soccer related, depending on where you're at and what you call it. You can connect with me apart from the LinkedIn that Kelly just mentioned, and X, formerly Twitter, the soccer dev, GitHub repo where you can find the code that I'm going to show in a little bit. I haven't uploaded that yet because I'm making a few changes, but it will be up there later today. So just set up the agenda real quick. We're going to look at the Azure ecosystem. We're going to talk about why you want to use Azure AI services, as well as some considerations when you're using large language models. We're going to talk about data privacy and security, which is something that comes up very often when dealing with really any sort of AI service. We're going to look at demos. As a matter of fact, the majority of this presentation is going to be demos so that you can see what options you have available and what scenarios you can solve with them, and just a few sample architectures that Microsoft has out there to give you maybe ideas for any projects that you are currently working with at the moment. So obviously AI, machine learning has been very prominent in the last few years. The explosion in cloud computing and how cheap it is to have the compute power necessary for training and just having these models and all these services up and running has made it a lot easier, a lot less prohibitive than it was, at one point. Self-driving cars, which is still a work in progress. Chatbots have been around for a while, even before ChatGPT. We have assistants in our homes, Alexa, Google Home, all things like that. And AI has been used in healthcare, been trying to streamline some of the more tedious tasks that people in healthcare do, to save them time and dedicate them more to the actual healthcare. And obviously, last couple of years, a huge explosion, a lot of attention thanks to ChatGPT and all the advancements in that area of LLMs. Now, if you are working on the Azure ecosystem, there's a few offerings out there for you that kind of target the different people. You need different knowledge if you want to use some of these tools. So we're going to look at a few of them. We're going to start from the bottom, using the products and based on the knowledge that you need, how much you need to know about machine learning or development, coding, and we're going to go up to more business-oriented applications. So at the very bottom, we have Azure Machine Learning. So this is a platform, this is a product that allows you to create a fully customized model. You have control over the training, you can bring your own data, you can choose the algorithm that you want to use to do the training, you can choose a bunch of different parameters in order to create a very specific model. So I'm using this tool at the moment for a project with machine learning that is a very specific scenario. It requires a model that is not available in some of the other services, some of the other tools that I'm going to show you. So again, if your scenario is very specific, this is the tool that you might want to use. And we're going to take a look at it a little bit so that you can see what you can do with it. Next, we have a set of APIs that cover different groups based on the functionality. So we have vision, speech, language, decision, APIs, obviously Azure OpenAI service that just joined recently. And then we have other APIs that target very specific scenarios. So, and most of them are built on top of the APIs in that second level. So bot service, Azure AI search, document intelligence, video indexer, they all solve very specific problems. Document intelligence, for example, allows you to extract information from your documents. It uses combination of vision and language, for example. Azure AI Search obviously has become very famous, or a lot of attention to it, because it's a big component on anything that you're trying to do with RAG. So those are a little bit more targeted to specific scenarios. Now, obviously, all these offerings are more geared toward developers and data scientists. So Azure Machine Learning at the very bottom, you need to know a little bit more of machine learning. You need to know a little bit more about what happens when you tweak certain parameters in an experiment, and all these APIs. And the second and third level, you need to have some coding experience. You need to know how to integrate with APIs if you want to use them. Now, moving up, we have the Power Platform. The Power Platform, so Power BI, Power Apps. We have now Copilot Studio. And at the very, very top, we have Microsoft 365, Dynamics, and Partner Solutions, all of which are, everyone is getting their own Copilot. All these products are getting their own AI in there. And these are obviously geared more towards business users. A lot of the times, if you want to obviously customize it, then you need to have a little bit of knowledge, programming knowledge and things like that. But if you're using just the Copilot out of the box, you don't really need to do anything. And like I said, it's more geared towards business users. So today we're going to focus on document intelligence, the APIs that are within the vision, speech, language, and decision groups. And we're going to focus also, we're going to look at Azure Machine Learning. Like I said, really quick, we're going to look at that. Now, why do I want to talk about those other services and not Gen AI when everyone is talking about Gen AI? Number one is because it's not always going to be the right tool. And a lot of the times, I think in technology, we get really excited about new thing. We get maybe a little bit of fear of missing out with the technology that everyone is talking about. And sometimes we might end up in a situation where the technology, that particular technology, is not going to be the right fit. So that's why I'm putting the spotlight on these other services, because it might be the right choice, it might be the right tool for your particular scenario. Cost is obviously another thing to keep in mind. We're dealing with tokens that sometimes is a little bit more convoluted to figure out, okay, how much is it going to cost me? The tokens and the request, the tokens and the response. These other APIs are a little bit more straightforward on, you can plan ahead, you can know in advance how much you're actually going to be spending. So that's another important consideration comparing these two choices. And then obviously, you have to deal with things like jailbreak attacks. You have to deal with hallucinations, which requires a little bit more of testing and knowing that your Gen AI solution it's performing correctly and it's not generating some crazy content that is not appropriate or is not correct. Now, with that being said, I love Gen AI. I'm excited about it. So I'm not here to tell you that Gen AI is bad. Like I said, I'm just here to show you what else there is out there in the Azure platform so that you can make an informed choice if you're looking to add AI capabilities to your applications. So why would you want to use these APIs? Again, it's a simple targeted approach. So these services cover very specific scenarios, very specific functionality. They're very easy to integrate, and they have SDKs available in very common languages. So C#, Go, Java, JavaScript, and Python. That's just an example of the languages that are available. Not all the services have SDKs in all these languages. So that is something to keep in mind, and just make sure that you look at the documentation when you're looking at one of these services. There is a free tier for a lot of these services, so you can take them out for a spin and give them a try without having to worry about incurring a high cost. So proof of concept or just testing with some of the tools that I'm going to show you, you can do that without having to worry about paying hundreds of dollars for that. And then they are customizable. So they are a middle of the road approach between Azure Machine Learning, which you can bring your own data and you have all these levers that you can pull to customize models. You can do that up to a certain point with these Azure AI services, but you don't need to know everything that there is to know if you're using Azure Machine Learning. Data privacy and security is something that comes up a lot when using some of these APIs. So they're obviously authentication, as with a lot of Azure services in general. So you get a key and an endpoint that you need to use in order to access these APIs. The data is encrypted at rest and in transit. There's limited access features. So there's some services, for example, facial recognition, speaker recognition, that obviously are a little bit more dangerous, quote unquote, or can be misused. So those services are a little bit more restricted by Microsoft. You cannot call those out of the box. You actually have to reach out to them, submit a form, and explain why you want to use that particular service. They obviously want to make sure that you're not misusing them. You're not using them for an application that violates people's privacy, things like that. The data storage for these APIs. The way it works is basically two paths. You can either, some APIs do not store the data at all. So if it's an instant call, if it's something that is going to return right away, there's no data stored at all. Or there's certain operations, like if you're doing audio processing, which might take a little bit longer and might not return right away, the output of that processing is stored temporarily so that you're able to retrieve it at a later time, whenever you want. Now, that data is only stored for 24 hours, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So after that, it gets deleted. It's not present there anymore. And then finally, a question that comes up a lot is, my data going to be used to train these APIs or train something like Azure OpenAI or ChatGPT or some of these other tools? And the answer is no. When you call these APIs, the request and the response are not going to be used to retrain these model or these APIs. So that is something that you can be a little bit more confident about. One thing that I don't have on this slide, but there is also the option for some of these services to be run as in containers on premises. So if your requirements are that you actually can't use Azure or regular Azure cloud for whatever reason, because you're dealing with sensitive data, or you're dealing with a government agency, things like that, you can run those, like I said, as containers in your infrastructure. There's obviously certain requirements that those machines need to have in order to be able to run these models, but just so you know that is definitely an option for you if that's something that you need to do. All right, so like I said, I don't have a lot of slides. Most of it is me walking you through all these things so that you can see how you can use them. So let's jump into some of these demos. So we're going to look at creating a resource, testing APIs with tools that I call studios. And then we're going to look at a small application that has examples of how you can call some of these APIs. And we're going to take a look at Azure Machine Learning as well. Now, we all know how it goes with demos, that we can prepare, but sometimes it doesn't want to cooperate. So a little prayer to the demo gods: let this code compile in not an hour, but a little while. Allow this application to run with speed and zest, as this will keep users glued to my test. If my code blows up in my face, do it with silent grace. And last but not least, when all is said and run, let thy requirements have been correctly done. All right. So I didn't have that yesterday. I had it on my presentation yesterday, but I didn't go through this slide, and actually my demo, one of the demos, didn't cooperate. So I made sure I didn't forget to do it this time. Okay, so let's start with Machine Learning Studio. And let me refresh real quick here, because I should have another workspace somewhere in here. So this is Azure Machine Learning Studio. As you can see here, there's a ton of different things that you can do over here. You can create compute resources if so that you can run your training experiments. So we will go ahead and create that right now. Then compute. All right. So down here, you can choose whether you want to use a CPU or a GPU. So depending, this is where I mentioned that you need to have a little bit more knowledge on what you're trying to do and what CPU, for example, is going to be more appropriate for your solution. As you can see, 29 cents per hour for a small job is going to be is ridiculous for the amount of computing power that you get. But here I am just going to do this one because I don't have this particular example, doesn't have a lot of data. You are able to set up a shutdown. So if you don't want this compute running the entire time, even though you're only paying a few cents an hour, it's very important to have this in case that you have a resource that is actually consuming a lot of, or it's going to cost you a lot. So here I'm going to say, okay, after an hour, just shut it down. That way I don't have it running the entire time. You can set up other things that, like with other Azure resources, if you want an identity, if you want to set up in a virtual network, a little bit more advanced. I'm just going to leave the defaults for now. If you have an application that you want to be available in that compute instance, you can do that here as well. You can add the tags and then review. Then I'm just going to click create. So I'm just going to leave a lot of the default values in here for now. And it is creating that in a minute. Come on. Yes, maybe. All right. While that is creating, just want to take a quick pause and ask if there's any questions about anything I've talked about so far before we continue.
So any questions can be posted in the Q&A. Our chat doesn't really work. So if anyone has any questions throughout the session, pop them in the Q&A box and we should be able to get back to you. Thanks. Suppose that pop-ins just say that.
All right. We are going to move along. Maybe I might have to do another prayer then, I guess. It's not behaving again. Anyway, so other thing that I'm going to show you today is this studio tools that you have available if you want to test these APIs. So I don't know about you, but a lot of the times if I'm trying to test an API or I'm just trying to test particular functionality, I just create a small application just to see what the responses I'm getting with the API or if it's going to actually work for the particular scenario that I have. So instead of that, for these APIs, you can use this particular studios. For example, this is the Vision API. You have different functionality here that is available to you to see what it can do. So let's do a object detection, which is a very common problem or very common scenario. You will see that you have images by default that you can use just to test it out, or you can browse if you have a particular image that you want to test and see how it will perform. So let's click on this one. And you'll see here that it identified different objects here. Footwear, person, laptop, seating, person. It identified 3 different people, I guess it looks like, which it is correct because you have 1, 2, and it looks like there's another person hidden over here. You will see that it will also get a confidence score. So this is telling you that it is about 52.5% confident that there is footwear in the image, which seems pretty low. because they're clearly there's footwear in the image. Another example is a laptop that is a laptop, but is not really sure that that is a laptop. I'm not super confident that it was able to determine that right. So we get back over here. Another thing that you can do, for example, is create tags for images. So if you have a big library of images and you're trying to generate tags that you want to use later as part of a search functionality, then you can do that automatically or in automated fashion with this API as well. So let's pick this one instead, and you'll see all these tags is what the model came up with. So clothing, is clothing there. It's able to tell that it's a train station, that there's a train, it's a platform. So you have all these tags that you can use that are generated automatically. You will see in a second that it's ridiculously easy to use in an application. So that might save you a little bit of time instead of generating these tags manually or with some other method. You can also generate, well, let's do the OCR. It's a very common scenario as well. A lot of the times we need to extract the text from an image. It is able to do handwritten text, but also use printed text in an image. So you'll see here that it was able to identify all the different words accurately. World, even though it didn't highlight it here, but it was able to identify. So if you're doing something simple like this, you just need to extract the text out of here. That is an option that you have. Okay. One thing that you can do, so from here, from these studios, you actually are able to create a resource, which is something that I talked about that I was going to walk you through. So if you go through create a resource, you give it a name, choose your subscription, choose a resource group, the location, and then the price tier. Here, I actually have the option of doing, this is the free tier or the standard tier. I think it is offering me the free tier because this would be a specific vision resource. When you create a resource, and I'll go to the portal in a second, you have the option to generate a resource that a key that will give you access to multiple services. So with one key, you can access vision, you can access language, you can access speech, or you have the option of creating a resource that will be just for that particular service. So in this case, the key that I get if I generate this resource is only going to get me access to the Vision API. That doesn't affect your performance. That really doesn't matter which method you choose to create the resource. The only change or the only thing to consider there is that if you need billing separated per resource, or for some reason you want different keys for all these services, that's one way to do it. If not, you can just create one. You can just create a resource for all of these. So let me go there now. So if I click on create a resource, I search for Azure AI services. And then that is obviously the very first option that comes up. You'll see here, this is one of the APIs that we're going to look at. So you can create those separately. If I click on Azure AI services, this is how you create a key that will give you access to multiple services. So here, Azure AI demo. So your key demo. And I'm not going to create it again because it's a very standard way of creating any Azure resource. But you will see here that right now I already have a key, a multi-service key. So the only option that I have in this particular scenario is just going to be this standard, because I can't create multiple free free keys for these services, as it is the case for a lot of Azure services. So let's see if I select that. The rest of the values or the rest of the screens are standard for Azure services. So the network access that you want to give it, any identity, any tags, and then you click on review and create, and then you get your endpoint and the key that you can use for those services. So any questions about the Vision API capabilities? All right. I don't see anything on the chat, so I am going to move along to the next service. So next one is the Language Studio, or the Language API. So here you can do different things. We're going to look at extract information first, personal information, scrubbing sensitive data from text or just any input that you get. This is something that you can do with these APIs. So for example, let's click on this medical report. You can obviously copy and paste any text that you have on your end that you want to test with. But here we're just using the simple input. And if we click run down here, it tells you all the sensitive information that it identified. And let's look at the JSON output. So this is what it will look like if you call this as just a regular REST API, which is something that you can do if you don't want to use the SDKs. But you will see here that instead of the sensitive information, that is all masked. So you can have a process that takes that text that you want to scrub, run an Azure function, for example, or some other automated process, run it through this API, and you could just store this text if that's what you want to do in your flow. You can just take this output, just store it. It'll have everything hidden. Separately, it gives you all the entities that it was able to identify. So it tells you Mateo Gomez is a person. It tells you the positioning within the text. So it starts at position 0, length of 11. And again, it gives you a confidence score that you can use in your process. So that you can say, okay, it is pretty confident. So yes, we're going to scrub it, or it's not super confident that it's something sensitive, so we're not going to scrub it, depending on which way you want to go. So it identifies names, it identifies dates, document IDs. In this case, it looks like a passport number. Like I said, dates, different information that you can identify. And again, this is without you having to do any sort of training, without training a model, without having to bring your data. All you have to do is an API call, and that's it. Down here, all these studios, if you scroll the way to the bottom, you again have the option to create a resource, but you also have links to quick starts or code samples on GitHub if you want to do something like that. Here is an example of how you can call the API using curl, if you just want to do that in your machine as well after you create your resource. So yeah, so really easy to use and a great option for you to test. Now, one thing that I want to bring up to your attention, I mentioned during the presentation or during the slides that some of these services are available as containers, but not all of them. This is an example of a service that is not available in containers, it looks like. In this studios, a lot of the times, if you look at here, it will tell you, hey, this is available in regular cloud, this is available as a Docker container, this is available in IoT on the edge, that's another option that you have. So you might want to look at this, or you can look at the documentation. It will tell you there if it is available as a container. So named entities, again, similar to what we saw, but if we click on here, so this has a bunch of information in there. If we click run, this is just extracting the entities without scrubbing any of that sensitive data. And it's able to identify dates, dates and times, person, organization, addresses, quantity, so different entities if you need to do some advanced processing with this text. Okay, let's go back to Language Studio. Then classified text. So you can detect the language of the text that you receive as input, but the one that I want to show real quick is this analyze sentiment and opinions. So let's do a service review, for example. So it looks like this is a review for a restaurant. So if we click run, it gives you the overall sentiment of the text. So this is saying this output on top is telling you that the text as a whole is overwhelmingly positive, so 91% positive, but also gives you the score per sentence. So here it's saying that long waits, it's not really sure. It's, you know, it's 31 positive, 41 neutral, 29% negative. So not super clear, but for good reason. It's saying that it's mostly positive. So you can use this service, for example, if you're automating the processing of your reviews, whether it is a product review or your own business review, your organization reviews, or some other text you want to find out if the opinion is positive or negative. You can do this in an automated fashion with these APIs as well. And again, this is done out of the box without you having to do anything other than call these APIs. So it's another example. So this is identify as a neutral statement. So you go by each sentence and it tells you all the values for that. So it's saying here that this particular sentence, the food is good enough to keep me entertained though. It's positive, 99% positive. So example of what you can do with this particular API. All right. You can also summarize text. And this is one that is relatively new. And for example, let's click this one. You have different options. So let's do abstractive summarization. This is something that you can do with LLMs as well. So here is, this is an example where you might want to compare both methods and see which one works better for your particular scenario. So you see here, this is a pretty lengthy statement, and this is a summary that it came up with. So it's just one paragraph that summarizes everything that summarizes what the model thinks is important from that particular text. So if you have to do that sort of processing for like news articles or some other information that you're just trying to get an abstract maybe to show on the page, and the users click on that and they go to the full article, something like that, that is something that you can do with these APIs as well. All right, I am going to take another pause here and check if there's any questions about either the vision or the language APIs at the moment. And if not, I'll move on to the next one. I don't see anything, Callie, correct?
Yeah, I think everyone's just pretty happy to keep going. But just while we're on the topic, looking at the people who are attending, we've got a very mixed bag of some professionals, some people who I know I've got a few candidates in mind who are looking to get started in Azure. Can you recommend any training courses? I know the Microsoft ones are pretty good. Anything that you recommend to get started within all of this?
Yep, and I actually have a few links towards the end of the slides with some what is called applied skills. So they are actually sort of a workshop where you actually have to implement a particular solution. It's not just going step by step. So I'm going to share that with you all, and I'll also share it in the repo with the code. So I'll share those here in the chat as well in a little bit. But yes, that is something that I have, because it's been asked a couple times, how do I get started? Where do I look at? In general, Microsoft Learn is a good place to get started, to get your feet wet with these APIs. And like I said, those more advanced applied skills workshops will give you, a little bit more exposure to this. So I'll share all that in a little bit.
Awesome. Thank you, Sam.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so speech is the next service that we're going to look at. So as you can imagine, this is mostly speech to text and text to speech, but you can do a few different things here. You can create you can do custom speech translation. We're just going to do the speech text real quick. I'll cover the text to speech in the application, the sample application itself. But here again, the call out is that here is telling you that speech to text is a service that is available as a Docker container. So again, if you need to run on premises, this is one that is available for you. So choose language, United States. So English, United States. Let's hope this works properly this time. All right, so you see, pretty straightforward. It didn't take a long time to come back. It spelled it properly, and you can use that with, I believe it's like 90 something language that you can use as speech to text. So let's do. Hola a todos, espero que estén disfrutando esta presentación. I almost did what I always do when I demo this, which is not stopping the microphone input, and then it starts going until I realize. But again, that is an accurate capture. That is exactly what I said in Spanish. It even puts the accents that spell it properly and all that. So it's a really cool application, or it's a really cool functionality, and again, you will see it in a minute. Ridiculously easy to add to your application. I'm not going to go through the other service, like I said, because we'll see that in the actual sample application. So I'm going to move on to Document Intelligence Studio, because Document Intelligence is a service that is getting a lot of attention because it is used as part of some RAG processes. So I don't know if anyone attended Microsoft Build or browsed or watched these sessions remotely, but there was a presentation where I can't remember the name of the company, but they were using this as the service to kind of extract information from the documents, create the chunks that were then fed to their indexes, and they were using that as the input for RAG in a Gen AI application. But even if you're not doing that flow just by itself, being able to automate the information extraction from their documents, whether it's PDFs, images, pictures of a PDF or of a document or an ID, all of those kind of things, that is something that you can do with this API, with this service. Now, there's different models that are available for you out of the box. So the three up here are more general. So if you just want to extract the text from your documents, you can use the read service. This is a little bit more sensitive than the one that we saw at the beginning of the Vision API. So if you are working with documents, you want to use this one instead of the other one. You have the layout service, which doesn't just extract the text; it also extracts the any tables, checkboxes, the layout itself, so that you can do more advanced processing. And then general documents, which extracts tables, selection marks. So it's basically a combination of these two models, kind of. You also have some pre-built models. So invoices, receipts, they're pretty much the same across industries, but also kind of all over the world. So they have most of the same fields. So you have some models that are already built that you can use to analyze your invoices. So for example, here's an example. This is a sample invoice. You'll see here it has the name of the company, has invoice number, invoice date, things like that. If I click here, run analysis, the model behind the scenes is taking this PDF, and as you can see, it's coming back. Everything that is highlighted, it's identified as a field. So you have the amount due, you have the billing address. It identifies all these elements automatically. It even is able to look at the table. So if I go to content, you can see here it's current table. So this is one table that I identified properly. And this is another one that is the one here below. So it has all the information. Actually, you go up. Scroll over here. A little bit weird. There you go. Table number 2. This is the itemized entries of what everything costs and whatnot. You scroll down, you'll see that it captured all the information accurately here. So really good model, a really good way to automate your input processes. So for example, if right now you are using some other method to extract information from here, maybe you need to dump this into your accounting software, or you just want to store it into a database, you can just run it through the service, extract all that information, and just store it automatically. You do get confidence scores with this service as well, so you can implement the flow that if the model is not really sure that it was able to identify the data, you can then send that to a person, do an extra check, just to make sure that you have accurate information out of this process. If you go to the result tab, you will see the actual JSON that you would get if you were to call this as a REST API. So this JSON is huge, which is why I would definitely recommend that you use one of the SDKs. It's a lot easier to interact with. But if you want to get into that level of detail and see what it looks like, you have access to that here. If you go to the code tab, this is actually the minimum code required to implement this in an application. So if you say, oh, okay, this is great, it looks like it's going to work fine, let me go try it, let me just build a small application for that. Right now, there's only 3 languages that you have available for doing this kind of copy paste. So Python, JavaScript, and C#. But if you copy and paste this will work out of the box. You just have to put your credentials, so your key and your endpoint, that's all you need. You run this and it will work. So it's a great thing to have, that you can just do that if you use this tool. So there's different models like you say here. So receipts, identity documents. I had someone at a workshop that I delivered not that long ago. Yeah, they're building an application where they're processing identity documents to kind of verify that they're valid and extract some information from it. They were using this model and it was performing really well for them. And Microsoft is constantly adding documents to the list of models here. So you'll see all of these obviously having added very recently. So that's another thing that these APIs have, is that they're constantly changing for good and for bad. So sometimes services get retired because obviously not a lot of people are using it, but most of the time there's new and better functionality and features added constantly by Microsoft. Last but not least, another thing that you can do is you can create custom extraction models. So if, for example, you say, okay, none of these pre-built match our particular document, and I don't want to use this model because it's very convoluted, we have to write a lot of code in order to extract the information, you can then come down here and you can create a custom extraction model. So I have here, let me open this one real quick. You can start with as little as 5 documents as part of your training data. You will have to label that data, so you'll have to tell the model, like, hey, this field is a given name, this field is person's name, date of birth, things like that. But it gives you a very good option if like I said, the other models are not performing the way that you want them to. So right here, you'll see all the text that is highlighted is what it identified as information that you might want to capture. Uh, Here, I uploaded it with like labeling already there, but all you have to do if you want to label manually is click on the highlighted field, and you can select the field that that you want to label it as. Or you can come over here and say, okay, I need a new field. You can add selection marks, signatures, tables. You can do that manually. It's a little bit more labor intensive, obviously, because especially if you have long documents. But there might be situations where that's the only thing that is going to work in your particular scenario. All right. So, any questions about this service? All righty. We are going to move on to the last one that we're going to look at. This is a new service that just got added to these APIs last year, I believe. This is a content safety API, Content Safety Studio. And the purpose of this is to make sure that if you need to block certain content, whether it's images or text, you can use this API to do that. So it rates, let's use the safe one. You can configure the filters. You can say, okay, I don't want any sort of violence at all. So you can specify that you want to block low levels of violence, for example, things like that. You can specify all that here. You can create custom block lists. So if there's very specific terms that you want to block that are not being blocked by the model that is provided by default, you can do that as well. So if I click here on run test, this text is safe. There's nothing violent or sexual in nature or hateful in nature in particular tests. So it's saying that this would be allowed if you were to implement that. And it also tells you the level for each category. So maybe you just want to block anything with self-harm, for example, or just violence. This obviously applies more so if you're building like an educational platform, for example, or something that is more geared towards kids. You don't want certain content to be available, or you don't want kids to be exposed to certain information. That is something you can do, again, in an automated fashion. This API is also what is used on Azure OpenAI. For example, if you're building your chat, there is a section there where it basically has the same controls, and it tells you, okay, don't generate responses that are sexual in nature, things like that. Again, just trying to keep that content or give you the control of what kind of content you want to generate or you want to allow in your application. All right, let's look at some code over here. So this is a sample application that is going to be available in my GitHub repo. So this has examples to call all these APIs that we've looked at. We have different functionality available there. So if we go here to Vision, actually, let me go back to Home. And I have something here, something basic using speech to text. Analyze image. So I have very simple navigation logic in there. So when I click on that microphone, it starts listening for input from the microphone. I have some processing behind the scenes that identifies the intent, and I navigate based on that. So what does that look like? Let's look at the code real quick. I believe it is here, if I'm not mistaken. So here, when that button is clicked, this start voice input method is called. And this is all you need in order to capture the text or capture voice and transform that into text. One call, one line of code, and you have that functionality available. I don't know about you. I think that is amazing that that's all you have to do and you get this functionality out of the box. This is, like I said, the simple logic that I have to do the navigation. But let's look at what the image analysis looks like. All right, so this is the picture that I provided as input. This is a picture with the objects kind of surrounded by a square. This is the caption for the image. So it's saying that the caption for this picture is a trophy on the grass, which is accurate. The tags for this grass, which is obviously there, football 96%, also tag soccer because some people call it that. But these are all the tags that were generated for that particular image. We'll see that in a second in the code. That ridiculously easy again. The objects that it identified. So in this case, it only identified the soccer ball, but not the trophy in itself for some reason. So that's an example that I've always found very, very curious. And then dense captions, which we didn't see Vision Studio, but these are captions for different things happening, I guess, in your image. So let's say a trophy on the grass. It is also a close-up of a football ball, close-up of a trophy, and then this this one is funny. When I was testing it yesterday, a blurry image of a blue and white cat, which I don't know if it's referring to this, which I guess kind of looks like it, but just an example that just because these APIs perform really well, there's still some scenarios where you might get some weird outputs from it. So what that looks like, let me go to the image service real quick. So this is the analyze image method that I have. So I'm getting the image as a stream. And these are all the features that you can specify. Here I'm just saying, hey, give me all these features out of the image. If you're doing something a little bit more targeted, then you only have to specify. For example, if you're only doing OCR, that is the only option that you would have to pass in this visual features. But if there's something else that you have to do, then you have the option to specify all this. There's some other options that you need to pass as a parameter as well. So gender neutral captions, if that is something that you need to specify, the language, and then smart crops. We didn't see this in the Vision Studio, but you can crop your images automatically using the service. So if you pass the smart crops feature, it will generate smart crops of your image. And again, one line of code is all you need in order to run that analysis. You pass the image data, obviously the features that you want to identify, and this line of code is doing all that processing for you. And as you saw in the application, it is super fast. It came back right away, and it gives you all this information that you can just use in your process. This is just something that I built in order to extract some of that information and put it in a different format, but all the magic is happening here with one line of code. Okay, so go back over here. Document intelligence, let me go here real quick. So that custom model that I showed you, I have an image here of the document in there. I'm running it through that model, and this one takes a little bit longer. So, but you see here, I'm just showing this on the screen, but given names, first name, second name. You see that the image looks a little blurry here. I can't remember if it's blurry also, like from origin, but you can see that I was able to identify, even though it is handwritten and not super high quality, I was able to identify that first name, second name. And the way that you do that, again, you pass the image. You can use PDFs for that. It doesn't have to be pictures. And again, analyze document. That's all you need. You have to tell the API which model you are targeting. So here I'm specifying that patient form model. But if it was the invoice, I think it's pre-bill dash invoice, for example. And then you are able to access those fields or the data in those fields using the names that you gave those fields in the training. So here I'm saying, okay, from all those fields, give me the given names field, give me that value. And that is what I'm populating. And I'm showing that in the application. So, um, so again, great, very easy to do. I almost running out of time, so I'm gonna do one more. This is a combo scenario where I'm translating speech. So I'm gonna take the input from the microphone, I'm gonna extract the text, and then I'm gonna translate it into another language. So the target language for this is gonna be Spanish. Let's test this translation with voice. All right, so it took the input as English and automatically translated that into Spanish, accurate translation, and really with just a couple lines of code. So let me go over here to the combo scenarios. And you can see here, again, we are using that recognize from microphone method. And then I'm just doing, I'm just calling this translate method over here. And here you will see one call again, translate async. I'm telling it the target language and I'm passing the text. And it immediately returns the response of the language. It can also detect the language that we use as input. We saw that in one of the studios. So super easy to do. I don't know about you, but I think it's a great, very powerful functionality, super easy to implement. All right, so this is still running. I don't know why. I guess that prayer didn't really work. Let's just do a hard refresh and see if we can get back into it as well. Let me close that. So again, it's just got stuck into that particular screen, but let's try this right away. So one of the great things about Azure Machine Learning Studio is that it contains it has this automated ML. So even if you don't have a lot of knowledge of code for machine learning, then you can use this as a very powerful option and a very easy way to run your own experiments. So for example, here you have a training job. Let's just create a VRT demo. Experiment name. VRT demo experiment. And all right, so here we're just gonna, you have different options for the task that are available. So this is a more basic approach, but you have classification, you have regression, time series forecasting, NLP, and then computer vision. So this is another way to do computer vision a little bit more customizable. So let's do regression, and then we're gonna import the data. And I'm gonna change this quick from local files. Next. And go over here. This one. All right, so it's gonna upload it in a minute. There we go. Then you can do a preview of what the data looks like. If you want to do any processing, also if you want to specify the type of data in it. So this is where I said that it is a lot more hands-on, and you have to do a lot more. There's a lot more that you have to do instead of just calling an API. But in certain scenarios, this is going to be the only way to go. So I'm just going to create that file. Okay, I'm going to use this one. I'm going to click next. Target column. Let's say how many goals the home team is going to score based on a particular features. But again, this is another example where you have different ways of this. You can specify the metric that you want to use, either normalized root mean or R2 score. You have the option to choose only certain models for training. So you see all these options. You can say, hey, don't use that. You need a little bit more knowledge in order to figure out what levers to pull in order to get to the performance that you want. And then over here, you can also specify, hey, are these columns a number? Are these dates, or what is it that you that is going to work best for your training? The validation type, you can choose what kind of validation you want to do. You can leave it in automatic if that's the only thing that you want to do. And you can also do you can use some of your training data and split that up for the training. So you can use a compute type that's already running. Click next, and then you can review everything that you configured. And if you submit training job, it takes when I've used it, it only takes about an hour, 45 minutes or an hour to do the training. And then you have a model that you can then deploy to an endpoint, and you can call as your own customized API, or you can export it, running that on premises, or just do other processing for that. I'm going to pause here, and I'm going to go back to the slides just to show a couple more things. Any questions about any of these services, or any of the code? Because you can look at the code later, at your own pace. Any questions at all as of right now?
Craig asked earlier, just taking it back to the image service, would that be just as easy in JavaScript? And would there be any way to see the image service.js at any point?
Yeah, so I believe the image one has a JavaScript SDK, so you would be able to use that just as easy as you saw with the C#. I believe JavaScript is one of those that is covered.
Awesome.
Right, so let me go back over here. And then just talk about a few scenarios, a few samples that are available in the Microsoft documentation as well. We have an example of image classification, just to give you some ideas of how you can implement all this. So you can upload your images into a blob storage, have some sort of trigger that for an Azure function that calls the Vision API, maybe extracts the tags or the captions. You store that in Cosmos DB, and then you can serve that in your web or mobile front end. So, for example, if you're creating a fashion website, for example, and you want to catalog products or certain clothes with certain tags. You want your users to be able to search by those tags. That is one way. That is one flow where how you can implement that. Call center data or analysis of call center data. That is another application for or analysis of any sort of speech or any sort of audio. That is another scenario that you can use these APIs for. So if you have a call center, you store the audio for the calls, you send that to speech to text to extract the text from those calls. You can store that in Blob or some other database. You can use the language API that we saw to scrub all the sensitive information from that text so that it's not stored anywhere. You can use these APIs in combination with Azure OpenAI or some other services as well. So in this example is using Azure OpenAI to do some enrichment and add some other data to it. You can store the output from this enrichment process in Blob, Cosmos, or some other database, and then you can serve that to Power BI reports. You can send that to or make it accessible to a CRM or just a custom web app that you have on your end. Document processing, that's an example. I've seen that. Like I said, we've had 2 or 3 projects recently at Jenica where clients wanted to process their documents in an automated or build an automated flow for that. So, for example, one option is you get attachments or you get documents via email or dumped into an FTP server. You can dump that in a blob storage. Again, you have a trigger to an Azure function. You run the document intelligence extraction. You store that data in Cosmos DB. You can also, or you have a custom backend application that follows the same flow. And then you can serve that into Azure AI Search, or you can do some enrichment with the language API. If you're dealing with financial information or financial documents, you can create a model in Azure Machine Learning to do fraud detection or some other processing. So there's all sorts of ways that you can combine these services for your particular scenario, or to implement a certain functionality that is needed in your organization. So these are some of the links that, like I said, I had. I'm going to copy here the architecture. This is the one that you want to look at if you want to look at the what is it? Chat. I don't see the chat on my end.
If you put it in the Q&A, for some reason our chat doesn't work on these sessions. But if you pop it in the Q&A, everyone should be able to see that.
Okay. And I will upload this PowerPoint also to the GitHub repo, and I don't know if I'm able to put it on the LinkedIn event. But if you connect with me on LinkedIn, I can also share all these resources with you. Again, those are my socials, Twitter, X, however you want to call it. But LinkedIn, I'll be more than happy to connect with you and answer any questions you might have. For some reason, the Q&A doesn't open for me, but yeah, I can share that with you all if you reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's all I have for today. Any questions about this or any other AI services in Azure?
Craig, you can go ahead if you've got anything to ask, or if anyone else wants to pop off mute, you're more than welcome to.
No questions. That was a really good session. Thank you very much. I would very much like a second session. So hit Callie up and see if you can get a second session that goes into a bit more detail. I was very enthused by what you showed us.
Definitely,
Sure.
Let's do it.
Yeah, if you guys want to explore any of those services in a little bit more detail, I can put together a more business-oriented scenario for any of these services as well. I'd be more than happy to come back and talk to Callie about it. So also hit me up on LinkedIn if you have any other questions. Like I said, happy to connect.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Have a good weekend. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Craig. Something from a recruitment side, which I'd be keen to know, is for somebody who would want to be going into this this style of work, what key experiences and skills would you say are the most important thing for somebody to maybe have on the CV or the resume, or to kind of suggest in an interview? What would be the most important part of their experience that would lead into a career in Azure AI?
I think if you would get started with these APIs, at least you're halfway there, because you can say that if you build definitely building side projects and using these APIs is going to be massive, but you need at least the basics of machine learning. So any courses out there that you can find, and I can also send some recommendations that teach you the basics of machine learning. What's a classification, what's a regression problem, all those kind of things. If you're at least able to answer the basics, that's a good way to get started. But other than that, a lot of the work that I do has been side projects, and that's kind of how I started to get more real projects at Jenica, for example, because I have that experience on the side, so I know all of these tools, I know these these algorithms, this functionality. So those are some ways that they can get started in some of the resources that I'm going to show, where you actually build something with AI or some of these AI services. That's going to be another great thing for you to show your expertise.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sam. So if nobody else has any questions, we will leave today's session there. So as Sam said, please reach out to him on LinkedIn if you've got any other questions, or you can drop me a message and I'll pass them over to Sam. I think a part 2 to this would be wonderful. So thank you so much, everybody, and I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Callie.
Okay, thanks
Thank
for
you.
organising. Cheers all.
No
Have a good
problem.
weekend.
Bye.